Take advantage of the day. When you get an opportunity in this game, you make a play. The playmakers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Touchdown, Kansas City! The Chiefs are right in the thick of it, baby!
On this edition of Defending the Kingdom, it's playoff time. We're already at playoff speed. Mitch Holthus with you, voice of the Chiefs, along with Matt Stat himself. An awesome follow if you're a Chiefs Kingdom red-blooded card member of the Kingdom. You got to follow him. I love your backdrop, man. You're all ready for the playoffs.
Exactly. I'm just channeling some good vibes here. Of course, the parade from last year, looking for another great playoff run this year, hopefully ending in another Super Bowl title. I feel like being around these kind of things is good this time of year. I mean, we've been waiting all year for this to run it back, right? Here we finally are. It's finally our chance.
Yep, and that's cool, that Union Station photo behind you. And Union Station's really cool right now with the whole run it back. It is really in full playoff regalia there. Thanks to George and all the folks for getting that done. And speaking of that, I'm in the radio booth. I'm just going to stay here, I think, for the next 6 days. Matt, just send me food, man. I'm already like, don't peak too soon, right? That's what Andy Reid would say. But I'm already in the radio booth, man. I'm just ready to roll. So send me food and water, and I'll be ready to go.
Well, see, this is the downside of the bye week, because I know it's great for the team to get healthy, both physically and mentally. But for us, all we want to do is watch Chiefs football. We have to wait 2 full weeks after the season and then resting all the starters in week 17. We're waiting like a month here for a real Chiefs game. I think both you and I are very ready for this. And you, yeah, for sure. I'll find some ways to get food to you because I don't think you're leaving anytime soon.
Nope, going to stay right here. Might smell a little weird on Sunday morning, but hey, just anyway, I will have my Bose 700 headphones. A lot of you have they bought them for Christmas gifts and holiday gifts. These are awesome. You can go to Bose.com. There is a drop down, just headphones, and you'll find them. This time now it's for Valentine's. And quite honestly, it is a very romantic gift. I have seen couples. We heard from a couple that watches the Defending Kingdom every week with roots in Southern California. They said it's totally changed their lives romantically by getting these Bose 700. So maybe you and Ellie for Valentine's. Just saying, Matt. Just throwing it out there.
Well, you mentioned this last week. I think you've planted that seed now. I need some new headphones. So this is perfect. I mean, I'm being very subtle about it, but some new headphones, could really help me out. So hoping that you help me out there, because I think I have a good shot this Valentine's Day.
Well, your lady's a graduate of the University of South Dakota. And so come on, let's bring it coyote style and get these Bose 700 headphones. Let's also get ready for these Cleveland Browns. Very interesting. The 6th seed makes it in against the 1 seed. The Chiefs taking on Cleveland. Cleveland ambushed Pittsburgh twice, 2 consecutive weeks to end the regular season. Okay, Pittsburgh's playing their backups, but nobody saw 28-0 first quarter in the Super Wild Card weekend. Cleveland got after Pittsburgh and absolutely wiped them out early.
Yeah, and honestly, probably the biggest night in the history of the Cleveland Browns franchise, at least this iteration of the franchise, because remember, the original Browns are now in Baltimore. So this Browns franchise, overall, they had not won a playoff game 6 years, hadn't won in Pittsburgh a divisional opponent in 17 years, which is crazy to think about. They had not won a road playoff game since 1969. So it's been a long time since Browns fans have enjoyed the euphoria they had on Sunday night against, of course, Big Brother and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and doing all of it with Kevin Stefanski, probably the head coach of the year in the NFL this year, in his basement watching the game just like you and me. So you got to feel good for the Browns fans, of course, hoping that Cinderella story ends here at Arrowhead Stadium on Sunday. But we know what it's like to see a lot of heartbreak in the playoffs, and the Browns certainly do as well. So feeling good for the Browns, big win over the Steelers, and should be a great game on Sunday.
1969, you're talking Leroy Kelly days with the Browns back in there. But honestly, for the Chiefs Kingdom, let's just sit here and realize what that 2015 playoff win meant in Houston. Now, they see that picture behind you and go, wait, we won the world championship last year and won Super Bowl 54. Whoa. That broke 22 years of no playoff victories to win that game in Houston that year. And no matter who was playing quarterback, for the Chiefs to win 30-0, that was a big deal. You have to start someplace, and this is where Cleveland has started. This is a team that I think is very well coached. And Matt, honestly, if I have to give these guys the biggest compliment in studying them, is that when they get the opportunity as a team, either on both sides of the ball here, they make the most of it. And that's what they did here in 2020.
Absolutely. And we saw kind of a microcosm of that in that Steelers game. So they're going up against the Steelers team that really beat up on them early in the season. But what happens? First play, the snap sails over Ben Roethlisberger's head, goes in the end zone. They recover that for a touchdown. They pick him off a few plays later, score a touchdown after that. And before you know it, it's 28-0 for the Cleveland Browns. And they capitalized off takeaways throughout the game. So I mentioned a few of them there, but 5 takeaways in that game. They scored 24 points off those takeaways. It's very hard to win in the playoffs against a good opponent like the Cleveland Browns, a hungry opponent in Cleveland, when you turn the ball over 5 times. And Pittsburgh saw that. I mean, they made a valiant comeback there, made it interesting at the end. I think a lot of Browns fans were worrying there, wondering if they're going to hold on in that game, but they do. Really hard to win a football game if you turn the ball over 5 times. And then we'll talk about this later on, but when you have a physical team like Cleveland where you can run the ball with guys like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt over and over again, and you keep taking the ball away defensively, it's very tough to come back. So the beauty of this Chiefs team, as we'll discuss later on, don't turn the ball over that much. I really can't see the Chiefs turning the ball over 5 times against this Cleveland team. So I suspect kind of a different game, a different rhythm here at Arrowhead Stadium on Sunday. But yeah, can't turn the ball over against these Cleveland Browns because they'll make you pay.
Browns were +5 in the giveaway takeaway, but when they did get takeaways, 76 takeaway points. That goes back to when they get a shot, they take it, and they've been very opportunistic there. But you mentioned the runners. We're going to get to them in the run game, but they broke Pittsburgh's back. When they got back within 12 points, meaning Pittsburgh, and everybody sensed, okay, here come the Steelers. They're going to work, they'll win this 50 to 49 or something. They ran that screen to Nick Chubb for the touchdown, and that just wiped out Pittsburgh. And something I didn't think I'd see in a Steeler team, because for 50 years they've had 3 head coaches and a ton of pride. But Cleveland just took all of that away from them with that screen pass. So it's not just those runners running, it's those runners receiving, because they can get some big plays in that regard.
And it's just being physical. I mean, if you watch that game, the Browns were more physical than the Steelers were. And like you're saying, I mean, you think of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you think of a physical, hard-nosed football team winning in the trenches. The Browns beat the Steelers in the trenches on Sunday night. And as I mentioned, the takeaways were a big deal, and Pittsburgh got off to a horrible start, but they had an opportunity to get back in that game. Like you just said, the thing is, Cleveland maintained that physicality throughout the game, and they love to run the football. They throw the ball to their backs too, like you said, 80 receiving yards between Chubb and Hunt on Sunday. But they run the football over and over again. 3rd most rushing yards in the NFL this year with 2,374 behind only Baltimore and Tennessee. 3 teams playing like it's 1950 here in 2021, averaging 4.8 yards per carry. And between Chubb and Hunt, they had nearly 2,000 yards just with those 2 guys. They had 7 runs of 10 or more yards against the Steelers in that game. So just incredible stuff where the Steelers are trying to come back, but they just keep hitting you over and over again with Chubb. It's really hard to get a rhythm and get back into a football game when you can't get off the field defensively. So they're quite a duo there. The thing with the Chiefs on Sunday is matching that physicality. And it's not just the defensive line, it's the front 7 as a whole. The Chiefs have been banged up at linebacker lately. Hopefully this bye will help with that, getting guys back, guys like Ben Neiman, Willie Gay, Anthony Hitchens, Damian Wilson. Those guys will be big on Sunday, making sure the Browns can't get big chunk runs, because that's really what broke the back of the Steelers. The takeaways were a big deal and made it give them a big hole to dig out of, but it was the big runs and the consistent runs that really broke their back.
Yeah, you got to think Ravens and Titans here with these guys. And you mentioned Kareem Hunt coming back to Arrowhead Stadium. He already put some stuff out there on Instagram and such. But he's not the only Chief alum here. Terrence Mitchell's on this team playing corner. You can go back and watch his 2016 game against the Raiders to know that he's part of the Chiefs lore. And there's some other Tedrick Thompson's on their roster, and he was with us in October. So they claimed him after we released him. Elijah Lee, former Blue Springs Wildcat, played against us in Super Bowl 54 with the 49ers, made a big hit on McCole Hardman in that game. He's back with this team, and a couple of guys from your alma mater are on this Browns roster. But let's go back to Chubb and Hunt and the fact that sometimes you mentioned it's like 1950s football, but sometimes it's so old school, it's new school. We've seen that, right, with the Titans, and we've seen that with the Ravens, in the fact that these guys get chunk runs. If you look at the Cleveland Browns, they have 21 runs of 20 yards or more and 3 50-plus runs. So not all the chunks in this game, in the game of football now, come from the passing game. If you get big, huge chunk runs in the running game, man, it can be devastating to an opponent.
And it's kind of like deja vu, what we were saying with Derrick Henry in Baltimore, Derrick Henry on Tennessee, but also Baltimore does the same thing last week where, sure, it's 3 yards here, 4 yards there, but then you keep getting hit over and over again as a defensive lineman or a linebacker. Eventually, the running back might break through. So it's imperative in this game. The Chiefs, like I said, match that physicality where they don't allow the running backs of Cleveland to break a big run after, 2-3 quarters of a hard-nosed football. Now, one interesting thing to watch in this game, speaking of the running game, is the offensive line of Cleveland. They're pretty banged up right now, and I'm really curious to see how banged up they are coming into this game. So they lose Jack Conklin at right tackle, all-pro, against the Steelers. He's day-to-day as of our recording here, so we'll see what happens with him. It's the playoffs, so I bet he plays, but his status and how effective he is something to watch in this game. Also, Pro Bowl guard Joel Bitonio, he was on the COVID list, so he didn't play against the Steelers. We'll monitor his status as well. But his backup against Pittsburgh was Michael Dunn. He got hurt on Sunday. So they had a guy who Baker had never met before playing left guard in that game against the Steelers. Played pretty well down the stretch, but the health of this offensive line is something to keep an eye on. Very good in the running game, and also in the passing game. They allowed the third fewest pressures of any offensive line in the NFL on Baker Mayfield. So that offensive line is stout. They're really good in the trenches. This defensive line for the Chiefs, it's a great opportunity to get after Baker Mayfield, disrupt their timing. We know how aggressive he is. We'll talk about him later. He can make some mistakes if you can get after him. But this health of the offensive line of Cleveland is a real storyline to watch in this one for sure.
Yeah, that running game can't help them, so it's chicken and the egg. And very soon here, we're going to pivot to Mark Donovan. But before we do that, let's jump into Baker Mayfield here because he's an interesting study. Now, fans throughout the country have gone, well, wait a minute. Wasn't he with Oklahoma and Patrick Mahomes was with Texas Tech and they combined for like 2,000 yards in some game that was like 90 to 89? I mean, that's what people are thinking here. Now, Baker Mayfield this year has shown he can win shootouts. I mean, they've had 49-38 games that they've won in their 11-5 record. But Mayfield's an interesting study. And when you look at his giveaways, I think this team to me looks well coached. And Alex Van Pelt, who used to play for the Chiefs, he was a backup quarterback back in the day with Kansas City, I think has done a very good job with Baker Mayfield.
So first, you mentioned that game between Mahomes and Mayfield. I have to talk about that. Back in 2016, I wrote this down, October 22nd of 2016. The two teams combined for 1,708 yards in one football game. Mahomes had 819 total yards all by himself. That was an NCAA record. I mean, just crazy stuff. I know a lot of Chiefs Kingdom is in Big 12 country, so they're very familiar with that game. The thing that's interesting about it, even though we're not going to see a game like that at all on Sunday, that's for sure, or in the NFL at all, is just the changing of the guard at the quarterback position. I think it's kind of fun to look back at that game and see how these two guys are now in the Final Four of the AFC. And the really crazy thing is Patrick Mahomes, at just 25 years old, been a starter for 3 years in this league. He's the elder statesman of all the quarterbacks in the AFC remaining in this playoff picture. So it's pretty incredible stuff on that note. But Baker Mayfield, what a season for him. The issue last year for Baker was turning the ball over. So had 21 interceptions. You can't have success. I don't care how many touchdowns you throw if you're throwing 21 interceptions. Just ask Jameis Winston about that down in Tampa Bay. The thing with Baker this year is he's really bounced back from that, figured out what was wrong. Just 8 picks this year, still threw 26 touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions since week 7. So really played good football the latter half of the season. One area he's really improved is his downfield passing. So he's been, since week 7, one of the better passers in the NFL on passes of 10 or more yards. So if you can still keep that big play ability, but yet you're not turning the ball over, that's huge for Baker Mayfield. And the thing about him that everyone knows about Baker is his attitude. I mean, the guy is an absolute gamer. He's relentless. He was that way at Oklahoma. He's that way now in the pros. And it's because he's always fought for everything he has. I mean, he was a walk-on. I mean, he wasn't some 5-star recruit that had everything handed to him. He was a guy that had to fight for everything. And, you see that in his play. He's relentless, like I said. And you never can count him out. So no matter how much you're up, he's always going to be firing. Now, you can take advantage of that sometimes of his aggressiveness. He'll make mistakes. And the question is, can you take advantage of those mistakes? But at the same time, he will always keep firing. And I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Baker Mayfield. This is a young, exciting team with a quarterback that's kind of perfect for their attitude.
No question. And Jarvis Landry, I've always loved his game, man. There's nobody better at running underneath routes and finding to get open in that 12 to 15-yard range than Jarvis Landry, and he was great against Pittsburgh. All right, we're going to pivot here a second. You talk about relentless. Now the Chiefs will host this playoff game in this divisional playoff round a little after 2 o'clock on Sunday. For, 25 years, the Chiefs did not win a home playoff game. And now, if they win this game, they will win 4 in a span of 3 seasons. But just to get to this point, Matt, because go back to July, and you and I were having casual conversations. Are we going to have a season? And if we do, what's Arrowhead going to look like? Can you survive? I mentioned one of our podcasts here was the three divisions. It's been one of the most watched and rewatched of any that we put up on Defending the Kingdom, and it had to deal with the Chiefs winning not only the AFC West, getting the bye in the AFC, but winning the COVID division. Now, very shortly, I'm going to talk with Mark Donovan about what the Chiefs have done to get to this point. But to me, Matt, it is nothing short of a minor miracle that the 14-2 Chiefs, as the 1 seed, will host a divisional playoff game Sunday against the Cleveland Browns.
And it's also really a testament to everyone in the organization, right? So as Mark said a few days ago during his press conference about these topics, NFL is the only sports league to host a full season with fans the entire year. And that is not easy to do with these crazy times that we're living in. It takes everyone. It takes people in fan experience, people in stadium operations to figure out a plan to make this work and to do it throughout the year, to adapt, to figure out how you can get fans in the building safely and let them enjoy the Arrowhead experience in a way that they can go home and know it was safe as possible. And you know that having fans in the building makes a difference. I mean, we've been in stadiums that are totally empty, and I mean, you can hear a pin drop. It's not very, how can you feed off that energy? Because there is none. You have to create energy on your bench, and it's very difficult. Even when you have 15,000, 17,000, however many thousand fans in the stands, the players feed off of that. And it's absolutely huge. I know for a fact, I've talked to several players about this. It has made it so much easier to play at Arrowhead Stadium and so much more fun to play at Arrowhead, and they fed off that energy all season long. I can't wait to see what the stadium is like on Sunday. I understand it's not a normal Arrowhead capacity crowd, but we know how starved these fans are for some playoff football after a full year of trying to get back to this moment. And here we are. They're going to be so ready and so excited. I cannot wait to see the atmosphere on Sunday.
It's playoff speed, man. These fans will be ready to go. All right. Earlier in the week, I had a chance to talk to Mark Donovan about a variety of things, who amplifies just exactly what you said. Here's that chat with Mark. We're going to pivot just a bit here on Defending the Kingdom, and we're blessed today to have the president of the Kansas City Chiefs with us, Mark Donovan. I don't know who called you El Presidente first, me or Travis Kelce, but he loves to call you El Presidente. But you have certainly had to take on a lot these last 10 months. But before we get to that, I think one of the worst things I do, Mark, is take things for granted. 8 years ago last week, everything changed. And today I see what's going on in the league. 7 teams are looking for coaches. And not only that, many of them are just looking for something, some continuity. And what happened 8 years ago, I just don't want to take it for granted.
Yeah, I don't think any of us take it for granted. You and I have had a lot of conversations about the 4 years preceding that, and then what we're going to do coming out of that. And that was pivotal for our organization. It goes back to, Clark went into that by being really, really decisive and making some really big decisions. And that's what should not be overlooked. And we were at a precipice of going a couple different directions, but he made some pretty big commitments, and here we are today, on the just about the opportunity to have another record-breaking successful season, and hopefully string a lot of these together. And we have the ability to do that right now.
I love the way we revere our founder, Lamar Hunt, but it's like Clark is building his own legacy. There's a lot on the line this week against Cleveland, but if we win that game, 3 straight AFC championship games at home, Mark, and the 58 years prior to that, none. I mean, there's history being made every day here. Yeah,
and I think we talk a lot about giving ourselves the opportunity. You put yourself in a position to have an opportunity. And it's really hard to do what we did as a team this year when you are the one being hunted, when everybody's giving you their best shot. And you hear the players and coaches talk about that. And all credit goes to them for being able to mentally, emotionally get to this point. But it does go back to those decisions and making sure that you're empowering the right people and making sure you're giving the right people the opportunities. And Clark should get a lot of credit for that. To your point, we like to talk about never been done before and breaking records. And in the past, we were able to talk about that, but now we're able to actually say it in statements of fact. And we did it last year. We've done it again this year. And we continue to have opportunities to do that. We got to take care of business Sunday, and then take care of business next week. But we're going to do one piece at a time.
I don't know if you'll ever write a book, but I'll buy it because I want to read the chapters on the last 10 months. Back in July, we're thinking, are we even going to have a season? Now here we are at 14-2 with the bye and getting ready for a divisional playoff game. What has happened just to get us to this point?
Yeah, first of all, we should give credit to the National Football League. To be the only professional sports league I know of that actually had an entire regular season. Every single game played of a normal regular season. And we had to switch days and had to make a bunch of adjustments, but we got through the entire season and did it safely. That's a significant accomplishment. Really proud of our team and the fact that we had the opportunity to be the first team out of the gates and show the world that we could do this, and we could do it safely, and we could do it successfully. And then to be able to do it every single home game and keep hosting fans and keep finding ways to make it better and better. And look, I'm a big believer in home field advantage. I think that the Arrowhead experience is powerful, and love to have 75, but it's still very powerful with 17. And that really matters. And our team, not only the team that works here every single day, who came up with the plans, who came up and had the meetings with the health department, negotiated how we could do this, figured out ways to do not only general seating, club seating, but found a very unique and I think the only one in the league way to do it on the suite level, finding ways to get our fans in here safely. But then, we've got 2,000 people who work for us one day a week in COVID, going through all kinds of different protocols, doing their jobs differently, and doing it every single week so that our fans can experience Arrowhead. And proud to be a part of that organization.
And now getting ready for the playoffs. We saw Buffalo host with fans, and we saw some teams do it in the wild card round. Anything specific for this divisional playoff round that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, so interesting. We went back a couple weeks ago and sort of looked at the calendar and figured out if we won a couple games and we'd have the bye, and then we'd have a little bit of time to get ready for our first hosting a game. And we took on the challenge of what can we do to step it up another level? What can we do to bring back some of the feelings in Arrowhead that we've been missing this year, and just celebrate what makes Arrowhead special? We look at this as an opportunity in a national stage just to celebrate what makes Arrowhead special. So our team came up with two really cool ideas that really do build on that tradition. The first is we're going to actually bring tailgating back and do it in a socially distanced and safe way with our tailgate suites. We're actually going to set them up in the parking lot. I think it'll be a cool gathering place for our fans, but also just a way to continue to reiterate just how important tailgating is to Arrowhead and the experience. And then we found ways, we've talked before about how we divided the venue. Arrowhead is now divided into 11 different venues to keep people safe. Well, within those venues, could we identify some spaces where we can provide a different product for the playoffs? And we came up with two different all-inclusive opportunities where if you're seated in one of these two zones, you'll be able to actually have an all-inclusive club-like experience on the lower level. So in our Founders Club and in our draft room, you'll be able to get back and forth in that during the game. And it's just another way of saying, hey, we want our fans to be together to celebrate socially distanced way, following all the protocols, but do it in a way that brings back some of those great traditions of Arrowhead.
That is awesome. I've had conversations over the past several months. I get a chance to talk to our coaches via Zoom call. I don't get to see them in person. I miss those personal contacts. But I've had talks with Kirsten Krug a lot. I've had talks with Rick Burkholter. Just the immense toll it's taken, but not just that, the task that the staff has taken it and done beyond the call of duty. What about the sacrifices that staff have made here to make this even possible?
Yeah, I can't even describe the sacrifices that we made this year. I think for me, having lived through it with most of those people, the one thing that comes crystal clear is the commitment level of our staff is just different. It's special. And this year proved it more so than any other. When you've got a team of people who are getting called at 3:30 in the morning to figure out who tested positive or didn't test positive, and then at that point it kicks in. Now we got to do the contact tracing. Now we got to figure out what we do with practice. Now we got to do a scheduling. Now we got to do everything else. That takes an army of people, and it's every single day for an entire NFL season. And then you're taking those same people and saying, okay, how are we going to figure out how to handle our staff? The fact that Clark and the family said early on, we're not going to furlough, we're not going to lay off. We're going to figure this out. We're going to keep our staff safe, and we're going to keep them stable through this entire season. To be able to work for an organization like that is a privilege, but also to be a part of it and to see it actually happening every single day. You really do stop. At certain points during the season, you just stop and go, as much as this is really hard and it's a challenge every day, it's special to be a part of, and the people are what make it special. So you mentioned a few of them. It's hard to make the list because it just is too long. Every single department in our building, every single department has stepped up and done more than they've ever done before. And what I'm really excited about as a leader in the organization is when you're on a team that's able to do that, you sort of continuously stretch your bounds. And when we get back to some form of what it used to be, those same people are going to be able to perform at that same level and really, really take this organization further. And they've proven it to themselves. They've proven it to each other. The bonding that's gone over, it's a little different when you're on the phone every couple of nights at 3:30 in the morning with somebody you work with, as opposed to seeing them with coffee at 9. And the challenges you take on together, they really matter, and they really build those bonds that I think are going to pay dividends for the entire organization going forward.
Final question. And I love the traits of this team. I love this 2020 Kansas City Chiefs team in its own unique way, but the discipline that has been shown by our players and the leadership shown by Andy Reid. Let's just take the coaches and the players, sacrifices they've made, and said, no, we're going to try to run this back, to go 14-2 with a rock-hard schedule, to go 8-0 on the road with the teams we played, but then also to say, okay, we're following these protocols. We're going to sacrifice time with family. We're going to get this done. What has happened there that the fans need to know about, you think?
Well, you hear so much about the partnership between Brett and Andy. I throw Rick Burkholder in on that with this particular issue of to be able to not only stand up in front of the players and communicate it, but to have a culture where the players immediately accept that challenge. And they all appreciate it, and they bond over the fact that they're going to work together to make sure that they are as successful as they possibly can be. We talked about it early on. The team that has the most discipline, the team that does this correctly, is going to be the team that has the most success. And, we've been fortunate so far. Anything can happen any day. This virus is unpredictable. But we've done a really good job of communicating to the players, presenting the challenge to them, and they've done an amazing job of accepting that challenge. Coaches have reiterated it, and not only does the coach have to reiterate it, but the coach has to take the same challenge. They've got to be just as disciplined. And look, we've had our little campfires that we've had to put out. We've had to isolate people. We've had to but that's part of the challenge too. It's like you've got to be set up in a way that can be efficient and say, okay, we identified what it is. We identified where it came from. Here's what we're going to do to isolate and keep that away. We've had to make sacrifices. We've had players miss games. We've had coaches miss games. But we've had to all appreciate that we're all in this together. And our overall success is going to be dependent on our individual contributions.
Well, Mark, thanks for being with us today. I guess I'll close the way we began. Just thanks for your leadership and direction when this has been as hard as maybe as it's ever been for you. But it's just so proud of this organization, and looking at the past 8 years and what the next 8 years could be is just very exciting.
We're very excited. We're fired up. Let's go get a win on Sunday.
Yes, sir. Mark Donovan, president of the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, Mark Donovan, like I said in that interview, when he writes his book, I want to read the chapters on this last 10 months because there's a whole lot of stories we don't even know of people have sacrificed to make this happen. All right. We're going to wrap things up here on the Cleveland Browns. This Defending the Kingdom podcast, talking about playoff speed and how just playoff regular season speed, then there's warp speed of the playoffs. This Cleveland defense to me is interesting. It starts with Myles Garrett, the number 1 pick in the year that the Chiefs took Patrick Mahomes in that 2017 draft. But their front dismantled Pittsburgh, I thought. Secondary has struggled. Terrence Mitchell, we mentioned, former Chiefs alum, is back there. But they rotate a lot of guys on their front seven, and they'll try to make things difficult for Patrick Mahomes.
Definitely. And Myles Garrett, you mentioned him. He is the game wrecker on this team at 12 sacks for him. And also, you might have seen that Steelers were triple teaming him at one point, and he was still getting some pressure. So you got to know where Myles Garrett is on the field at all times. One of the best pass rushers in all of football. He's the beating heart of this Cleveland defense. Also, just a lot of guys on this defensive line that you just know of. I mean, they've been around the league for a while. Guys like Olivier Vernon, Sheldon Richardson, former Mizzou Tiger. Also, Adrian Claiborne. He's been in the league forever, I feel like, but he's on the team. All these guys can create pass rush and get after the passer. If you look at their numbers overall defensively, they're pretty much middle of the pack everywhere you look. I mean, they're not a team that is going to get the opposing passer 5 or 6 times in a game, but they'll create constant pressure, and they have guys that you have to respect. So we'll see what this offensive line can do against these guys. That's another area where having the bye week is great for this offensive line to get healthy, to get ready for a pretty good pass rush in these Cleveland Browns. The thing is, you can score on this team. I mean, they're allowing 26.2 points per game, 11th most passing yards allowed in the NFL this season. They've also allowed 33 passing plays of 25 or more yards. That's 6th most in the NFL, and we know what this Chiefs offense can do. So they're certainly a challenge. They have some good players on this defense. Denzel Ward, the number 4 overall pick a few years ago, he was on the COVID list against the Steelers. We'll look at for his status this week, see if he's out there. You mentioned Terrence Mitchell. Funny story about him. When I was an intern here, Mitch, back in 2016, he's the first guy I ever wrote a story on when he had that big game against the Raiders. Pretty cool to see him still in the league playing pretty good football. But yeah, they have some guys on that defense that can make plays. We know that. But overall, they're middle of the pack. We'll see what this Chiefs offense can do against them.
I got a Mitch Matt stat for you, though. When you look at this team and the yards they've given up passing-wise,
okay,
they have given up 300 yards passing 6 times. Even Dak Prescott threw for 504. Cleveland won every one of those games. They did not lose a game against a high-volume passer. Twice it was Joe Burrow. You can go right down the line. They beat Tennessee when Tannehill threw for 389. And so very interesting here. Again, a team that takes advantage of its opportunities. In Mayfield, he wins shootouts. I mean, he has done it this year. The other thing interesting about Cleveland, they cross-pollinated against the NFC East this year. Plus, they were the 4 seed in their cross against, they played the Raiders and they played the Jets. They lost to the Jets. They played Cincinnati twice. So 9 of their 16 games were against teams with losing records, but they went 8-1 in those games. So when you look at the Cleveland Browns, a sign of a team that's growing is they win those games. So this is a team where the Chiefs have got to get on it and take care of business in the divisional playoffs.
Totally agree. They're definitely a team on the rise. You can tell a lot of young talent on this team and doing a lot of that without Odell Beckham Jr. Probably their best player on offense gets hurt mid-season. They don't have him for most of the year. Now, one thing I do want to mention here is the Chiefs' defense doesn't get a lot of credit nationally when we're talking about how they can defend Mayfield here, but they held the opposition under 21 points 9 times this season. I mean, people don't really talk about that, but it's a fact. That was 3rd most of any team in the NFL. The Browns, they get in shootouts, like you said, but in games where they were held to under 20 points, they're 2-4 in those games. So as much as this game will be made about Patrick Mahomes going against Baker Mayfield, if the Chiefs' defense can contain what Mayfield's trying to do through the air, keep those running backs at bay, this Chiefs defense could be the story of this game and could be a big win here for the Chiefs, trying to get back to the AFC Championship game. If they win this game, Mitch, they'll be the first team in AFC history to host 3 consecutive AFC title games. Only one other team has done that in NFL history, the Philadelphia Eagles, coached by Andy Reid from 2002 to 2004. So cannot wait to see if we can do that again here at Arrowhead Stadium. It's pretty wild to think that we waited so long to win a playoff game here at Arrowhead, to host a AFC Championship game, and now here we are with a chance to host 3 consecutive ones. And standing in the way, Cleveland Browns, very young, exciting team that will be around in the AFC for a long time. Should be a great matchup. After
58 years of never hosting an AFC Championship game. All right, we'll close it out here. Red zone, red zone, red zone to me. Red zone defense. The Chiefs we know are last. It's driving Spags crazy. Not a lot of trips to the red zone by the opponent, but the Chiefs are last in the NFL. And the Browns, mentioned they take advantage of opportunities. They're 3rd in red zone offense at 74%. Now, we know the great romances in Chiefs Kingdom. We know about Patrick and Brittany, right? Now we know about Matt and Ellie and these Bose 700 headphones. I'm telling you, it's magical, buddy. You get one of these for Valentine's, you'll be at playoff speed all year long. He's Matt McMullen. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. Thanks for joining us. It's playoff speed here on Defending the Kingdom.